You can hear it now, can't you? That eerie silence. The kind that used to only happen in the dead of night. Except now, it's the middle of July, peak summer, and JFK sounds like a ghost town. No roar of engines, no suitcase wheels clacking across tile, no laughter, no chaos. Just nothing. 3 million tourists gone. Not blocked by some pandemic. Not turned away by border guards. They just chose not to come. And that, right there, is what should terrify everyone. Because this isn't about masks or mandates or COVID tests anymore. This is about something far scarier. Something quieter. A collapse of faith. A rejection. A conscious, deliberate, and damning vote of no confidence in the United States of America. The world looked at the U.S. in 2025 and said, we're not coming. Not because we can't, but because we won't. Let's not pretend this is an isolated event. From Honolulu to Orlando, from Vegas to Denver, the dominoes are falling. Flights canceled, hotels half empty, car rental lots full to the brim. Disney World, yes, Disney World. Cutting back on fireworks and staff hours because nobody's showing up. You want to know how bad it is? Ask the small business owner in Manhattan, whose restaurant once lived off foot traffic from tourists. Ask the hotel worker in Los Angeles, who hasn't seen a full house since March. Ask the Uber driver at McCarran Airport in Vegas, who waits 3 hours for a single ride. Because when tourism crashes, it doesn't just take out the airlines. It gut punches entire cities. It stars economies. And it exposes just how fragile the so-called American dream really is. Why are they leaving? Let's not sugarcoat it. The U.S. has become unwelcoming. Not officially, not with walls or bans, though we've seen those too, but in a deeper, more insidious way. Let's start with the basics. The price. Want to fly into the U.S. from Toronto? Get ready to cough up $1,000 just for flight. Hotels? Double what they were 2 years ago. Food? Ridiculous. A family of 4 now needs a small loan to spend a week at a mid-range hotel in Miami. But it's not just about money, it's about value. What are you getting for that absurd cost? Delayed flights, canceled flights, lost baggage, gate agents so burned out they barely look up. And once you land, cities that feel unstable. Police sirens every few blocks. Homelessness right outside the terminal. Streets that feel less safe than they did even 5 years ago. And now the world is paying attention. Canada has issued travel advisories. Canada, the U.S.'s oldest friend, its neighbor, its ally. Advisories not because of war or plague, but because the United States is no longer seen as safe. Because it's no longer seen as stable. So Canadians are staying home. Europeans are heading to Japan. Australians are visiting Europe. And the United States? The supposed crown jewel of global tourism? It's sitting on the sidelines, watching its visitor numbers nosedive. Let's talk about the ripple effects. You think this is just about international tourists? Think again. Americans themselves are opting out. Why fly when the ticket costs more than your rent, and you'll probably spend half your time stuck on a tarmac or rerouted through 3 airports you've never heard of? People are driving long distances instead. Or worse, not traveling at all. Family reunions are shrinking. Summer vacations are being skipped. Business travel? Because it's just not worth it. And what happens when Americans stop flying? Airlines start trimming routes. Mid-sized cities like Charlotte and Denver start losing connections. Airports downsize. Employees get laid off. The economic engine starts sputtering, not in a loud crash, but in a slow, grinding death spiral. Do you feel it yet? That creeping sense that something is deeply wrong? This isn't just about tourism. It's about identity. For decades, the U.S. sold itself as a land of opportunity, the playground of dreams. From Broadway lights to Vegas nights, from Pacific coastlines to New England fall leaves, this country marketed itself as the ultimate destination. But now, the brand is tarnished. The dream feels distant. Even Disney, the very symbol of joy and escape, has become a luxury that most can't afford. Theme park tickets cost more than a week's groceries. Hotels inside the parks now run higher than monthly mortgage payments in some parts of the country. And with every family that crosses it off their list, another part of that dream fades. And yet, Somehow, the silence continues. Where is the outrage? Where are the leaders sounding the alarm? Instead, what we get is indifference, shrugging, excuses. The economy is strong, they say. People are just shifting priorities, they say. No, this isn't a shift. This is an exodus. This is a mass movement of people, foreign and domestic, turning their backs on a nation that once held the promise of adventure and discovery and replacing it with doubt, disillusionment, and danger. This is what it looks like when trust dies, because trust isn't just about treaties or headlines. It's about a feeling. It's about whether you feel safe getting on that plane, whether you think the city you land in will welcome you or leave you stranded. It's about whether the experience you're paying for is worth the pain, the uncertainty, the sheer exhaustion of navigating a system that no longer works. And for millions, the answer is now a resounding no. You want numbers? Billions in lost revenue. Billions. That's money that doesn't go to restaurants, museums, tour guides, hotels, or retail stores. That's local economies drying up, cultural centers closing, historic districts becoming abandoned shells. All because people stop believing. This isn't a blip. This is a reckoning with what America has become and what it no longer offers. You can't slap a smiley face on this. You can't market your way out of a trust crisis. You can't discount your way back into people's hearts when the problems run this deep. Because once the world starts seeing you differently, everything changes. When the U.S. loses its magic, it loses more than tourism. It loses status, influence, power, soft diplomacy, cultural dominance. It loses its seat at the table not by being pushed out, but by simply being left behind. The question now isn't going to be fixed. The question is, will anyone even try? Will leaders address the real reasons people are staying away? Will they fix safety, affordability, infrastructure, and trust? Or will they keep pretending the silence at airports is just a phase? Instead of a warning bell, the planes are grounded. The runways are empty. The dream is flickering. The world is watching. And the question is, are you? You ever walk through an airport terminal that feels like it's waiting for a funeral procession? The vending machines still glow. The intercom still calls out ghost flights. But no one's there to hear it. No families rushing for gates. No kids dragging stuffed animals. No elderly couples fumbling with passports. Just hollow space. And that endless hum of nothingness. That's what 15 major airports across the U.S. look like right now. And it's not a fluke. It's not weather. It's not politics. It's rejection. A slow, soul-crushing rejection of what America used to be. Let's bring it home for a second. Canadians, people who love going to the U.S., are walking away. And not because anyone told them to. Because they don't recognize it anymore. Because they don't feel safe, respected, or welcome. And frankly, because they're tired of pretending. Tired of being the polite neighbor in a one-sided friendship. Tired of spending billions in U.S. border towns, beach cities, theme parks, and outlet malls, only to get mocked by American politicians and ignored when they raise concerns. Tired of being seen as cash cows instead of actual visitors. Do you know what it feels like to finally say no to something you used to love? It hurts, but it also feels like freedom. Canadian families who once packed up the minivan for a summer road trip to upstate New York are heading to Nova Scotia instead. Couples who used to book Vegas shows are now trying Montreal jazz bars. Parents who swore by Disney are discovering Banff. And it's not about patriotism. It's about preservation. Emotional self-preservation. Financial self-preservation. Safety, dignity, and sanity. Because how many times can you land at a U.S. airport and be treated like a suspect? How many times can you spend thousands only to feel like you're inconveniencing someone just by being there? Canadians aren't boycotting out of hate. They're walking away out of exhaustion. And what do we get in return? Mockery. Political jabs. Another Trump soundbite about how Canadians are ungrateful freeloaders or boring socialists. As if walking away from overpriced theme parks and baggage claim chaos is some kind of betrayal. No, the betrayal started long before we left. The betrayal started when the American tourism industry decided profit mattered more than people. When the airlines gutted service, hiked fares, and blamed the weather. When hotels started charging resort fees for broken pools and no housekeeping. When cities like San Francisco and Seattle became symbols of decay instead of wonder. And now it's too late for discounts. You can't rebuild trust with a coupon. You can't undo years of cultural arrogance with a TikTok campaign. And what hurts the most is how avoidable this was. The U.S. didn't have to fall this far. It chose to. It chose neglect over investment, noise over nuance, spectacle over substance. Tourism is one of the most human industries on the planet. It's built on emotion, on desire, on imagination. People don't travel for logic. They travel for feeling, for wonder, for escape. But how can you escape to a place that's falling apart? Try convincing a German family to bring their kids to New York when the headlines are about subway crime and migrant crackdowns. Try selling a Japanese honeymoon couple on San Francisco when the city looks more post-apocalyptic than romantic. Try pitching a Canadian snowbird on Florida when the governor's actively mocking your healthcare system. This isn't marketing failure. This is cultural failure. And it's hitting every corner of the economy. The boutique hotel that laid off half its cleaning staff. The tourist trap diner that now opens only 3 days a week. The Broadway shows that used to sell out months in advance, but now paper the house with last-minute giveaways. Do you know what happens when millions of tourists disappear? Small towns dry up, landmarks fade, museums shut their doors, parks lose funding, locals suffer. Because tourism isn't just about pretty photos and souvenirs. It's about connection. It's about economy. It's about identity. And when that dies, the ripple effect is catastrophic. Let's talk about Vegas. Vegas used to be America's glittering beacon of escape. Shows, lights, energy. But in 2025, it's fading. Not just in brightness, but in belief. European bachelor parties are going elsewhere. Canadian gamblers are staying in Ontario. Asian tourists are choosing Macau. Even Americans are skipping the Strip because the thrill isn't worth the cost anymore. And if Vegas is struggling to sell fantasy, you know things are dire. Then there's Orlando, a city that, for decades, ran on the dreams of children. But now, those dreams cost too much. A family of 4? $2,000 just to walk through Disney's gates before food, before merch, before transportation. And the magic? It's running low. Ask the parents who saved for 2 years and left disappointed. Ask the cast members who've seen the parks grow quieter, meaner, sadder. Tourism is dying a death of 1,000 cuts, and each cut bleeds into the next. Airlines reduce flights, lest demand cities shrink. Local businesses close, visitor experience declines. Tourists don't return, repeat. We are watching a cycle of decline that is self-sustaining and self-inflicted, and all because the core promise of American travel has been broken. That promise was simple. Come here, and you'll feel something incredible. But now, you feel nickel and dimed. You feel unsafe. You feel unwanted. And so, people are choosing different dreams. Smaller dreams. Local dreams. Safer dreams. And here's the truth America doesn't want to admit. Once tourists learn they can live without you, they rarely come back. This isn't a pause. It's a pivot, a cultural recalibration. People aren't just staying away temporarily. They're finding alternatives. They're building new traditions. They're discovering their own countries, their own regions, their own hidden gems. They're saying, we don't need America to feel alive. And that shift, that realization, it's seismic. Because for decades, the U.S. operated under the delusion that it was irreplaceable, that people would always come back. But entitlement is a terrible business model. And now, the fantasy's unraveling. So here we are, 15 major airports half empty, 3 million tourists lost, billions in revenue gone, and a country still pretending everything is fine. This isn't just a tourism crisis. It's a reckoning with identity, with perception, with place in the world. Because when the world stops visiting, it's not just your economy that suffers, it's your soul. And here's the final question, the one nobody in Washington seems brave enough to ask. What happens when the dream dies and no one mourns? That's where we are, not with a bang, but with silence, with empty gates, with unanswered calls, with forgotten postcards. This is the new face of American tourism. and the world has moved on. It's strange, isn't it? How a place can still exist, still function, still show up on maps, and yet feel like it's fading in real time. That's America in 2025. Still lit up, still online, still pretending, but fading. Because when people stop coming, they stop caring. And when they stop caring, your relevance dies a little each day. This isn't just a travel problem. It's a perception crisis. It's about what the United States used to symbolize versus what it represents now. And those two visions couldn't be more different. Once, the U.S. was a destination for dreams. A place where strangers became stories. Where a kid from Saskatchewan could step into Times Square and feel like anything was possible. Where a teacher from Ireland could walk through the Smithsonian and feel connected to something larger than herself. Where a family from BC could take that legendary drive down Highway 1 and feel the thrill of freedom echoing through every cliff and curve. But now the stories are different. Now it's a Canadian couple who drove home early from Florida after being harassed at a gas station. It's the British tourists who spent 14 hours in customs at LAX, only to have their luggage lost. It's the Japanese traveler who left San Francisco feeling more anxious than inspired. The stories have changed, and that change cuts deeper than most realize, because tourism is about more than economics. It's emotional. It's about trust, about identity, about imagination. And for decades, Brand America had a monopoly on that. The open road, the big city lights, the national parks, the music, the movies, the vibe. But in 2025, the vibe is off. You feel it the moment you step into an American airport. The stress, the tension, the fatigue, the waiting, the surveillance, the surly customer service, the hollowed-out food courts, the lost children, the misconnections. You feel it in the cities, the decay, the sprawl, the contradiction of wealth next to deep poverty, the feeling that the system is barely holding together and that no one's even pretending to fix it. You feel it in conversations, in the exhaustion, the cynicism, the self-protective sarcasm of people too burnt out to hope. And so, the world is turning away, quietly, resolutely, without press releases or protests. They're just not coming. And every empty seat on a plane, every darkened hotel room, every idle shuttle bus is a silent message. We don't believe in you anymore. That's the real crisis. Not just the lost money, not just the canceled flights, but the loss of belief. Because when people stop believing in your dream, they stop investing in your future. They spend their money elsewhere. They send their curiosity elsewhere. They shift their affections elsewhere. And what does that leave behind? A country full of empty infrastructure, of monuments to better times, of shuttered attractions and over-leveraged chains, and laid-off workers and forgotten landmarks. A nation that used to inspire the world, and now can't even inspire a vacation. And this is where it gets existential. What happens when a country famous for its influence becomes irrelevant? Not hated, not feared, just skipped? What happens when your biggest export used to be culture, and now, culture wants nothing to do with you? Because make no mistake, that's the road the U.S. is on. The slow burn of becoming optional. And while the politicians posture, and the pundits bicker, the signs are all around us. Look at the airport lounges that used to be full of global travelers, now half empty. Look at the souvenir shops in Times Square, slashing prices, laying off staff. Look at the theme parks, running promotions they wouldn't have needed 5 years ago. Look at the border crossings, once jammed with Canadian plates, now eerily quiet. This isn't a phase. It's a shift. And the longer America pretends this isn't happening, the more irreversible it becomes. Because you can fix a runway, you can upgrade a terminal, you can repaint the signs, but you can't rebuild trust overnight, and you can't fake welcome. People know when they're being tolerated instead of valued. They know when a country sees them as wallets instead of guests. They know when the dream is dead, and they act accordingly. And that's where we are. 3 million tourists canceled their trips this summer. Not because they had to, because they chose to. That is power. That is protest. That is people reclaiming their right to feel safe, respected, inspired. And you know what? It matters because tourists aren't just numbers. They're signals. They're mirrors. They reflect how the world sees you. And right now, the reflection isn't flattering. It shows a country out of sync with itself. Overpriced, overpoliced, undermaintained, spiritually exhausted. And people are choosing not to step into that picture. So what now? Does America keep spiraling, blaming inflation, blaming weather, blaming wokeness, blaming socialism? Or does it take a hard look at what it's become and why the world is walking away? The truth is, recovery is still possible, but it won't come from PR campaigns or flashy slogans. It'll come from rebuilding experience, from treating visitors like humans, from investing in the soul of tourism, not just the spreadsheets. It'll come from remembering what made America desirable in the first place. Curiosity, openness, hospitality, awe, because those things don't cost billions. They just require will. But until that happens, until the experience matches the promise, the planes will remain half empty. The terminals will echo with silence. And the rest of the world will keep finding wonder elsewhere. Because if the American dream was always about freedom, exploration, and possibility, then right now, that dream lives outside America. And the final tragedy? Most Americans don't even know it's gone.